To hell with the date on your birth certificate. Let's talk about what we have in common across generations. Life, sex, and tech at any age. Welcome to Age Blind with Nancy Shenker.
Hey, boys and girls. Welcome to Age Blind. This is a place where all generations are welcome, and we talk about sex, life, and tech at all stages of our lives. And this month, because it's the month of St. Patrick's Day, among other things, and you probably know that the phrase, the luck of the Irish, is a common phrase. But that doesn't mean that we can't have luck at all stages of our lives. And today's guest and I are actually going to be talking about how do you make your own luck in the world today. If you know anything about history, you know that Irish people haven't always been lucky. But history lesson is over. I want to jump into today's topic. As some of you know, I authored a book a while ago called Manifestation for Skeptics. Little shameless plug here. And it's basically about how life is a combination of deliberate actions that we take, our plans that we make, but also there is a certain level of, as I like to say, woo-woo or kismet, whatever you want to call it, that does sometimes dictate where we wind up in life. So that's what we're going to delve in today is where does that pot of gold come from? Does it come from manifestation? Does it come from vision boarding? Or does it come from some combination of woo-woo, as I like to say, and deliberate action? And because we're talking about luck today, here is my little lucky dice. Dawn, what number do you think it will land on?
The best number, 6.
Okay, close. It was a 5.
I was going to say 5. That's very funny. And I was like, nope, 6. I should have stuck with it.
Dawn and how I met her is actually a really great example of that manifestation, woo-woo, as they say in Yiddish, beshared, kismet, karma. Years ago, I started doing more business in East Hampton and became familiar with some of the Hamptons media. And I ended up working with a luxury home builder. And through that, through my marketing company, I ended up meeting Dawn Watson, who at the time, I think at the time you were writing for one of the local magazines, which I know that you still do. And since that time, which was more than 10 years ago, Dawn has also rebuilt her life and her career and is lucky in love. Here are my little lovebird gnomes. But even though we met through this random connection, our friendship has lasted more than 10 years. And now she's been a guest on my podcast, not just once, but twice, and also helped me connect to Ryan Serhant of $1 Million Listing, who I wrote about for one of my day job gigs. So welcome, Dawn. Let's get into it.
Thanks for having me again.
Yes.
Always a pleasure.
Dialing in from Long Island, as we Queens girls
I'm
say.
on the East End. Yes.
So let's tell us a little bit about the story of your life, but start with what you're doing now and then how you got here.
All right. Well, right now, I've just completed my 4th year of real estate. So I am a licensed real estate salesperson. I'm with Serhant, which is an incredible disruptor in the real estate world. Ryan started the business in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. It is already the brokerage. It's number 6 in New York City and growing all over the place, all over the country. And I am actually fortunate enough to have been, I think, the 9th person in the door in Hamptons. So I am Dawn at Serhant.com, which I love.
Wow. And talk a little bit about how he designed his offices, because I found that fascinating. When you talk about a disruptor in a space, typically real estate offices are comprised of desks with phones and people sitting around waiting for people to call and show them homes. But what has Ryan done with his brokerage, which is kind of fascinating?
We call the flagship, Serhant House. So I think that probably, says quite a bit. Like everything about where our spaces are designed to make us feel the comfort of home, make us feel the freedom of home, give us a sense of family and community. So I think that whether we are agents working together or other people within the brokerage, where we're, collaborating, or we're bringing clients or customers in, there is this sense of community and well-being and ease and relaxation and comfort and luxury, of course. So I think that that translates very well. We're a real estate company. We help people find places to live, right? So we should have a welcoming environment in which to bring them and which to work on our own. So it works well. I'm at my own home right now. Actually, we are in the middle of a massive renovation, thus the art on the floor and on the walls, and
And
But
the dog wandering in the background.
I've got two of them, and they're going to continue to wander. That's the only way I can keep them quiet. I think they're 8-month-old golden retriever puppies, so they're a handful, but they are adorable.
And and I just launched my own new personal brand, nancyaf.com. And one of the things that I've always been passionate about is that companies are about people. They're not just about the brick and mortar, the desks, the stuff around them. They're about personalities. And Ryan started out as a soap opera actor, then went into
Yes.
real estate. And like him or hate him, he's done an amazing job of building out his own personal brand. He does include his family in that brand. I mean, not everybody lives like a multimillionaire, but there is a warmth and a genuine edge that he brings to everything that he does. So when you went to work for Sirhant, didn't you need to get kind of trained in how to do your own social media and build your own personal brand? And how has that factored into your brand reputation?
Well, actually, the way it started is the person who was running the Hamptons office at the time noticed me on social media. So I already had a pretty big presence on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at the time, and LinkedIn, and not yet TikTok, but I was already, I have a decent amount of followers. I'm very well known by regular people out here on the East End because I used to be the features editor for the Press News Group. And then I had a website called hamptonspartygirl.com. And so I've been around a lot and I've met a lot of people here. And so in my social media existence has always been kind of, me. It's
Very down to earth, not
Yeah, yeah,
flashy,
very
work
me. I mean, just
very
not like
homey. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not I mean, though I am number 1 sales agent by transactions for 2024 in the Hamptons, which is
Yay.
yay, and just found out that thank you, woo, speaking of fortune and such too, but and also in the midst of doing the Wall Street Journal rankings right now, which I'm eligible for, 4th year in real estate, by the way. One of the things that differentiates me is that I am a regular person and I'm not taking photos of me stepping off jets or getting onto a yacht and that kind of stuff. And I come from, talking about what we're talking about today, I come from very, very humble beginnings.
Yes, and that's where I'd like to go
Yeah.
next,
Yeah. That's
is
great. So
where
that's,
did you start and how did you make your own luck throughout that journey?
well, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. So I'll just kind of put that out there. I also, in the 7th grade, my parents were divorced when I was, I think, in the first 7 years old. My parents were divorced. My mother kidnapped me in the middle of the night and took me to Florida. And my father had to, do all of this stuff with the court system to get me back. It was contentious, obviously, between the two of them. And so other things happened, which are too boring to go into with this
I'm
podcast. But
sorry you went through that, Dawn, by
well,
the
thank
way,
you.
but
It made me who I am. I mean, it's absolutely made me who I would never change a thing because I am ambitious and I just want to do my best because of it. So I live with foster parents. So when I was in 7th grade, I was removed from the home and placed with foster parents. Not because I was a bad kid, but because my parents just neither wanted the other to have me. And it was just a real mess. And I'm so grateful for my foster parents who helped me realize what I could do and what I could be. They helped me get emancipated when I was 18 years old. So that way I could go to college, so I could get the financial aid in order to go to college, because otherwise I would not have had it. I would have been, living a substandard life with no education and no means otherwise, probably, right? Even though I was a, 4-point student, I just didn't know. I didn't know I had the resources. So my foster parents actually helped me with that. I am not estranged from my entire family, however. So I do have that family and community. But my husband, who is a theologian, so perfect, right? My husband says, Dawn Watson, you are the walking example of providence. And I love that, and I
And
take
how
that.
share with us how you met your husband, because I think that's a great story in and of itself.
We had both been, dating, and this is a time a long time ago when, more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so, when the only people who were online dating were people looking to hook up and our parents, right? Like, so it was a long time ago when it was, like, not cool. But I had a friend who said, "Dawn, you've dated enough people here. You need to expand your circles." And he had a friend who did the same thing and told him, like, see what's out there. And so we met online, and we both knew immediately. There's my dog, one of the dogs. We both knew immediately. We still quote some of the things we wrote back to each other to this day. Like, we said there are so many little coincidences. There are so many little connections that we have already. He's a Midwestern guy and I'm a Midwestern guy. He did not have downtrodden circumstances, but we have the same core values and beliefs. And
And it was eHarmony, you said, right? I
yeah,
think you once
yeah,
told me.
yeah.
You once told me the site was eHarmony?
It was eHarmony. Yeah. So we both, filled out the questions and they kind of put us together. And it was so much more than just, "Oh, you're good looking," or "You're smart," or "You're funny." It was like we just had this very instant, deep connection. We both kinda knew before we even had our first date. And so we had our first date, and then we had our second or third.
Very
We have
cool.
the story of how we got together, which we still, enjoy remembering.
And how old were you when you met?
Oh, 45?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
last
yeah.
month, our theme was love. Do not give up. It could happen at any age. So,
All my friends always say this to me. They're like, "Hey, you make me believe," right? Because
yeah,
I thought for sure I had never been married by choice. I had been asked. I'd even said yes, but I never, had gotten married by choice because I knew it wasn't right for me. And then I met Mike, and he was right. And so,
the, re-
yeah, who
the
knew?
rest is history.
We were
Any
married
other
4 years ago, 4 years ago, a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, any other examples? We talked about like circumstances as a kid that put you in foster care, which ultimately led to you going to college. We talked about how you and I randomly met. We talked about how you met Mike. Any other examples? We talked about people finding you on social, and that's how you got connected to
Yeah.
Ryan Serhant. Any other prominent examples in your life of times that you made your own luck? And then I also want to hear about things that happened that were kind of unlucky, where you spun the straw into gold, as it were.
Well, I think the big thing is, I prefer to say fortune. I prefer to say, I mean, there is some luck, right? There's just some actual, just random luck that happens in the universe. And I totally believe that. But I also feel like so much of what we can create for ourselves it ends up in good fortune. And I think that, I worked hard, but it's also just being out there and being available and being open. And so what's been interesting in my life is that I've never had to ask really for anything. It's all just come. So, like I said, I got my license and started working 4 years ago. Someone called me on the phone when I was getting laid off from my corporate job at a big brokerage because it was the pandemic. And I had helped this person and his team do very, very well. I had been a PR person for the brokerage, and I had 70% of the market share for all of Long Island that I had, garnered doing all of my outreach. And so as they're announcing to everyone, "Oh, we had to furlough people because of the pandemic," this person calls me up and says, "Join my team." And I said, "Yes." Yes, I was gonna use my license anyway, yes. So that happened. So I joined like the number 1 team for that brokerage out of the gate. So that's a big thing too.
Yeah, something you just hit on, which I think is really important for our listeners and our viewers to know, is that being open, if you do nothing else, is be open, which sadly has the acronym BO, not that BO. We want the good BO, is as you go through your day, your week, your month, throughout the month of March, don't look at other people and go, "Oh, they were lucky," or "They were fortunate." I think you used the word fortunate, or, abundance. Like, somebody doesn't just come along and drop a pot of gold on your lap, but you have to collect the pennies. Now I'm using a lot of pot of gold, Lucky Charm,
That's
leprechaun
okay. When it
analogies.
all leads to, hopefully some sort of lucrative, yeah, success.
Yeah,
So,
they
yeah.
just sometimes fall out of my mouth. I
Yeah.
can't help it. And that's something that I think you and I have in common, and why we've remained friends, is that we are, now it's going to sound super woo woo, but we're open to other people. We're open to the universe. We're open to opportunities, and never hang up on somebody, discount somebody, treat them badly, because you never know.
I have a story. Can I share this really quickly?
Yes,
This just
please,
happened
please, please.
today. Yeah, my whole thing is like, yeah, you be yourself, work hard, be available, be nice, be kind, like be right. And so, but so years and years and years ago, I was at an event when I was an editor. I was at this event and I ran into this guy. It was at the parish in Southampton. And he said something quite rude to me. He compared me to I was a size 2, by the way, at the time. He compared me to a very overweight, nasty, unattractive female comic who has since been canceled. And he's like, "Oh, you look like that lady." I'm like, "What?" I'd never met him. He was so rude. I think he was a little, we were at an event. But it just happens today is his birthday, and he is still in my Rolodex.
For those of you who are listening who are under the age of 50,
Rolodex, of course,
a
yeah.
Rolodex is like your contact list on your phone, but
Yes,
it was made out of paper and it
yes,
actually spun around. So I think the
yes.
Rolodex will make a comeback, just because it was just such a cool office
And it was a
supply.
cool thing,
And you
right?
could, like, if you wanted to
Yeah,
share contact information with somebody, you would just pull the card out of your Rolodex
yeah,
and hand it to somebody, and they would.
right.
We're gonna sound like we're in
Yeah,
Jurassic Park here,
yeah.
dinosaur-y, even though you and I are of 2 different decades at least. But that whole notion of, like, you didn't just airdrop something to somebody because you couldn't, because there
No,
was
and
no
you didn't take a picture of
technology.
it with your phone or no, anyway. But so this guy's he's in my network, he's in my sphere, whatever. So it's his birthday. I send everyone birthday cards on their birthday and digitally. And he got back to me and said, "Oh, thanks so much, Dawn. And by the way, if you know anybody who needs whatever his business is, think of me." And I thought, nope.
Not happening.
Just no,
No,
because he's not a nice person, even though he's in my resource group. I would rather use somebody who's just as good at their job and is nice. I think that's another part of being open is don't be closed, don't be mean,
yeah, don't be a
don't
dick, DBAD, as I like to say. And if you ever are unkind to somebody, there is no statute of limitations on apologies. I just did an episode called Love Means Always Having to Say You're Sorry. And in the Jewish tradition, there is one day that is a day of atonement. It's like very efficient form of confession where you just get a chance to apologize for everything that you may or may not have done wrong over the years. And my mother was, especially in her later years, she passed away at 95. But every time I would see her, she would give me a blanket apology for anything that she might have done over the previous 90 years that required an apology. And even though she didn't have to do it, it was really great that she did. And again, talk about bizarre Kismetian things. I recently launched my brand, as you know, Nancy
Mhm.
AF. My friend, whose name also happens to be Nancy, who I've known since third grade, saw my post. She reached out to me last night. I didn't realize that she had lost her mother recently, and we rebonded. And here's a woman who I've known since I was 7, 8 years old. And even though we've been in and out of each other's lives, we connected now at a time when she's figuring out what her next career move is going to be. And I'm really feeling the need for more people from my past to come into my life, not because I live in the past, but because there is a certain continuity of
Mhm.
people who knew you then and then know you now,
Yeah.
which living in Arizona, but coming from New York, I don't have that continuity. So whenever I get one of those pop-up calls from somebody back east, it really does feel like going home again, which is why I always love talking to you, Dawn, because you are a connection to that life, which is very much a part of my current life.
We share history and memories, and, when we especially when you're connecting with someone who's from a long time ago, from your childhood or from like, they know you. They know you, and you know them, and I think that's something that's also yes, you can apologize for doing something unkind. Yes, you can do that stuff, but I think that one of the takeaways I have is life is long, and we are the people we are. We choose to be that person, and I think the people who always knew us from before that you're still the same person. You've grown, you've changed, you've aged, you've gotten wiser, but there's a kernel of they've known you this whole time, and I think that I would like people who've known me, whether it was from I was 4 years old until or they met me yesterday, to say, she's kind, she's good, she's whatever, but I think that building those relationships, I don't know, kinda keeps us in our place in a good way.
Oh, for sure. Like, I ran into somebody who I knew since 2nd grade, who's now very, very, very successful Hollywood writer and producer, and his mother's still alive, and he said, "Oh, yes, my mom remembers you. She remembers what a nice little girl you were."
Yeah.
And
Nice.
it really made me think about some of the bad habits that I've acquired over the years that have come to the surface as a result of stress or being in situations where I had to be less than kind, like working in corporate life for over 20 years and picking up bad habits from people around me. And that is one of my commitments for the next 30 years because I will live to be 100 is to go back to being that sweet little girl that I was when I was 7 or 8 before the world fucked me up, or I allowed myself to be fucked up by the pressures around me. So, I think we can all look back and go, "Oh, yeah, that was like a really bad era," or "That was a very stressful era," or
None of us is perfect all the time, and I'm just grateful, uh, good fortune that we were not around in I wasn't in my 20s, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. There's no bad behavior captured on camera anywhere, right? Like, we've all made mistakes, we've all behaved maybe not quite as honorably as we'd like to, but I think the difference is when you acknowledge that and say, "That's not who I am, and that's not who I wanna be."
And so you talked about a few things that were kind of like unlucky moments in your life that you were able to turn around. Anything else, because that ultimately results in resilience, it results in wisdom. Anything else that you could look back on and go, well, that sucked. I wish that hadn't happened.
I guess, I mean, goodness, I feel so strongly that and this is gonna be woo-woo too, but I do feel so strongly that everything happens for a reason. And
Yep.
so, even if something not great happens, whether I've created it or it's just occurred, happened to me or whatever, I do feel like maybe not in the moment, because in the moment you're like, "Why me?" But I do feel like, generally speaking, like there's a reason that happened. And it's so far in my life, I haven't been, murdered or put in jail or like anything terrible has happened, right? But I feel like so far in life, anything that has happened that's bad has just come out something good's come from it. And my husband would always say, "Oh, silver linings dawn." But what I love is, and he's a realistic guy, but he is a theologian, but he says, "Well, the good thing is," and so that's something that we've imparted to one another. I do feel that way. So even if something really awful happens, like, our dog died or what, but we have two beautiful new puppies and it's been enough time. We just happened to be driving by actually the road, and there was this pen full of puppies, and we'd been talking about getting dogs. And my husband says, "Oh, I think that's a but like there look like a dozen puppies on the side of the road, like in somebody's house." And it turned out they were actually golden retrievers, which is just like our lovely Daisy who passed. their brother and sister, and, that's
Oh,
it.
so sweet.
Yeah, and it just happened. We just literally drove past. There was no sign, there was no number, there was no anything. I'm, like, knocking on some stranger's door, and finally she came, and she's like, "Oh, as a matter of fact, yes, we do have, and we have 1 female and 4 males left, so, you get your pick," and we got
Yeah.
Rosie
So
lucky.
the rainbows and the pots of gold are all out there. And you certainly have cashed in on that pot of gold, Dawn. How many millions of dollars in real estate did you sell last year?
Enough to get on the Wall Street Journal, so on their radar, so that's great, yeah,
Yes.
and to have the number 1 transactions. I do have something. Can I tell a providential real estate story?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And then we have about 5 minutes left. So great.
I was just telling the story to somebody the other day. So I just this is a great example of being open and having things kind of come. So I have this friend, she has this house in Southampton. She wanted to find a year-round renter because she has this like little barn in the back of her property, and she's like, supplement her income, whatever. She's like a $2,000 rental. So I said, sure, I'll help you with it. It's not what I normally do, but I'm like, I was a lifelong renter until I bought my first house,
And that's super reasonable for the Hamptons.
super duper reasonable year round, super duper. So I was like, of course I'm going to help her. It helps her. It helps another normal person get a place to live because it's very hard to afford to live here. So anyway, the guy who ends up renting it, his uncle came to me and he helped. He's like, I got to find a place for my nephews to live, whatever. So we signed the lease. He gets everything ready. A couple of weeks later, the uncle, who's my connection to this kid who's living in my friend's barn, he says, Dawn, I have this house and it's in Watermill, and I'm thinking about renting it, but I need to do some work on it. And can you help me? And so I said, sure. Here's an interior designer. Here's a bunch. Here's a bunch of interior designers. Here are a bunch of plumbers. Here are a bunch of electricians. Here's all the people. Here's a landscaper. Here's like my guy. So he uses these people. He totally zhuzhes this house up, right? And it's like my landscaper and my interior designer and like all these pics that
Oh,
I've
I know.
shared with
You're
them.
like a wellspring of resources. Like,
Yeah.
have always sent me great people when I've needed work
Well,
done.
yeah, the same, yeah. So I do feel like when you share the love, a
Yep.
rising tide lifts all boats, all that
Yep.
stuff. So you don't do it to get it back, but you do it and it does come back. But
Yep.
so anyway, so I'm going to cut to the chase on this. So he decides to rent the house. He says, John, can you help me rent the house? Absolutely, sure. So we rent it like $350,000 for the year for summer people, right? So we find the people. He gets the stuff. As soon as the summer is over, he says, okay, I think I'm ready to sell it now. And I'm like, all right. He said, can you help me? I'm like, yes. And so $6.4 million listing, mine, out of a $2,000 rental. This is providence. This is good fortune. This is attracting, and this is being decent. Right?
It is.
And treating everyone the same, no matter what it is. If it's $2 or $2,000 or 200,000 or 20 million, it doesn't matter, right? Just do good things.
Yeah, I'm a visual thinker. So, as you think about today's episode, think about those little gold coins that come across your path every day. And I'm always picking up pennies. And if it happens to be heads down, I'll turn it over so that the next person can pick up a heads up penny. And it is one of the beauties of aging in that both Dawn and I, although as I keep saying, I'm probably 10 some odd years older than Dawn, doesn't really matter because we're age blind. But one thing we do have in common is that openness, call it providence, call it woo woo, call it manifestation, but start and end every day open and grateful because you do at the end of the day make your own luck, good or bad. It's funny, I went to my first ever, thinking of dice, I went to my first ever bunco party this week, and it's a game of chance. You
Oh,
basically
so I don't
roll
even know what
dice
bunko is.
and
Yeah, okay.
yeah, I didn't know what it was either, and I'm like, "Oh, that doesn't seem like my jam, like bunco," but I was the biggest loser, and I walked away with $5. So, even losing can ultimately be lucky for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dawn. You were been an amazing guest twice now. And where can people find you if they are interested in real estate in the New York City area, Long Island? As you said, Sirhan is all over the place these days. So, what's your contact information?
I'm Dawn at sirhant.com. So DAWN as in Nancy at Sirhant, SERHAN as in Nancy, T as in Tom.com, or 917-287-2455. I'm all over social media and the web. I'm Dawn Watson Hamptons on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and LinkedIn. Find me. I'm happy to help. Nothing makes me happier than helping people live better lives through real estate. It fills me with joy.
It's home. It's where you wake up
Mm.
every morning. It's where you
Yeah.
go to sleep every night.
Yeah.
You know, I still consider my home to be the East End. That's where I went from the time I was a kid. I grew up in Queens, and that is still my home. And you're very much a part of my home, Dawn. And if I ever, I'm never selling the house out there, but you've been, as I said, the best resource for home repair, home services. Our house is 30 odd years old, so things are breaking, and you've been just a godsend.
Thank you.
So,
I have a great contractor for you, by the way, if you need.
all right, awesome. Good to know. We don't need that yet,
Not
but at
yet,
some
not yet.
point, nothing has fallen apart lately. But if you want to be a guest on the Age Blind podcast, you can reach me at nancyashenker@gmail.com. My new website is nancyaf.com. Please, please, please subscribe. You'll get all kinds of fun little tidbits. Speaking of luck or bad luck or good luck, I actually lost one of my favorite earrings last night. So that's why I'm wearing my green earrings that say luck or lucky. And I also decided that I was due for a new pair of earrings. I've been wearing these for like 10 years and my life is different now. So I need to change up what's close to my brain. Not these are temps. But if you are listening to this podcast audio only, you can also watch it. I have a great YouTube channel that not only has all of our podcasts full length, but also shorts. So if you don't want to sit through the whole 30 minutes, you can just watch a short and 30 seconds kind of get the gist. I appreciate all my listeners and viewers. And remember to always be age blind. As my intro says, it's not about the date on your birth certificate. It's what's in your head. It's what's in your heart. And to quote Dawn, just always be kind. And to quote me, don't be a dick. So peace out. Be age blind. See you next time.
Yes.